Let's keep calm and mother on. Mothering is way too important to do alone and way too serious to be serious all the time. My name is Christy Thomas, and I am here shoulder to shoulder with you, mothering and enjoying life together. This is the podcast where you can focus on being mindful and taking a deep breath with me and learning new things so you can pause and savor the amazing life you already have. Welcome to another episode of Keep Calm Mother On. Today we have New York Times bestseller Tia Levings here. She just published her memoir, A Well-Trained Wife, and I've known Tia since 2016 in the real life, and I can't believe that all the good things are happening for you, friend. I am so excited for you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. And this feels kind of full circle. And when I say full circle, I think about the circle we met in, which was a literal, actual labyrinth circle. And it's a special memory. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The BraveWriter retreat. And that's a big deal for a lot of homeschooling moms to leave their kids and go do something that is for them.
Soul nurturing, because Julie's magic with that. But
that's part of the ethos and part of the reason, Julie's a big part of my personal reclamation story and freedom. And that is the thing that she pours into BraveWriter is the taking care of mom,
Absolutely.
Taking care of you as a human being.
Can you give us a one-liner? I don't want to spoil any of your memoir. What would you say about your book to convince someone to read it? Because I want to talk to you without giving away your story.
I love that question. Yes. Well, so I always start with the tagline. It's a memoir of my escape from the Christian patriarchy. So on the surface, it is the story of how I got into high control religion and then escaped from it very viscerally. It's a graphic book. I was part of church sanctioned domestic abuse, and I'm very transparent about all of that through the process. But the book is really about how I found my voice, how I developed as a human being, how I learned to trust myself, how I healed from trauma. And it is both very relevant to the political scene that we're going through right now, because these same patriarchal forces are in our culture and in our government. But it is also highly relatable to anyone who has grown up in any level of church culture in the years, and also has experienced trauma, domestic abuse, emotional abuse, any kind of abuse, going into trauma healing and deconstruction. So there's a lot in there. It's just under 400 pages and it's jam-packed. But it's a quick, fast-paced read, and it will bring up all the big feelings, I promise.
Yes. And when I was reading it, I had the paper copy that I was generously sent from you. And then I also listened to the audiobook version because I knew I wanted to hear it in your voice. And I needed to take big pauses. So when you're reading this, know that that's a normal part of this experience too.
It really is. I say water, walks, and hugs. You need time to pace yourself. When people say that they read it in a day, because it is very fast-paced and compelling, you read it in a day or overnight, I kind of brace myself for you, because it's like, oh my goodness, you just went through so much in such a small window of time. Please, can I give you a hug? I'm fine. You need to remember that when you're holding a memoir, it's a victory. That is a victory and a beautiful thing. And I'm okay in the end. I'm more than okay. I'm better than I was. And that this is a testament of hope. And so I hope that comes across. But pacing yourself is wise. And if you can, then I'd recommend that.
So a key part of being able to write this memoir was rediscovering or learning how to really choose yourself when you were trapped in a dark spot. So how did you begin to choose yourself?
It was really the ultimate rebellion, because I grew up in a tradition that taught die to myself. That was the language that we quoted from the Bible, was that you needed to die to yourself and serve endlessly and to your own destruction if necessary. That relationships would hurt, that marriage is always hard, that child rearing, not just child rearing, but procreation as many times, to the exclusion of your health, your ability to provide and mentor your children, all of that. It did not matter as long as you were consumed. So choosing myself was very antithetical. It was at first an act of desperation, because when push came to shove, quite literally, I was not willing to die for the hill that I'd been taught to trust. And So choosing myself became an act of survival, but then there were, we choose ourselves every day. So especially in trauma recovery, you're going to make the decision to choose yourself over and over and over again as you learn boundaries setting and holding and go through modalities that treat the trauma that you experienced and to nurture healthy relationships and live a different way. That is all active choosing yourself. And so I had to learn how to do that. I didn't know how. No one taught me to figure it out.
Right. Because in that religious circle that I grew up adjacent to, it was, you're giving it all. It's what would Jesus do? You're supposed to just be a sacrifice. You're already broken. So there's no original goodness, no hope, no joy.
That's right. Yeah.
How are you choosing yourself today in terms of like a daily act?
That's a great question that no one's asked me in interviews. Gosh, it's a million different things. I would say it's checking in with myself when I receive news. It's understanding, like, what do I need right now in this moment? I usually put my hand on my chest and I breathe. And that's something that you encourage through your work too. Grounding. I sit down on the floor and I have to listen to myself think. Like, it's very easy for me to stay very busy and moving all of the time. And I have so many things going on that I could just very easily, not without any malcontent or malintent, I could just skip what I think about it or feel about it or need in the moment. And so it takes an active commitment to myself to say, no, what do you need? Have you had anything to drink? Do you need any food? It's always basic creature needs. That's what I'm always amazed at. Like, self-care really
very much like fundamentals of caring, right?
Right. It's very basic. It's taking care of the baby that I am. She needs sleep. She needs water. She needs food. She's going to cry if she doesn't get it. She's gonna,
Yeah. Like when we think about kids, we think about hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I like to add in lousy local conditions, like conditions that you're just not meant for, especially kids. But like there are post-pandemic life, I've realized how many times I've forced myself to go into something like a grocery store that my nervous system hates.
Yes, that's so key. And I did not, if I'd had just that one piece of information growing up as a highly sensitive person, it would have changed so many things in my life. And it's so freeing to say, you know what, I just can't even be in this room right now. This environment is too much for me. And it's not like something wrong with me. It's me understanding that I need to hear, I need to feel myself. And if I can't do it, then I'm getting swept away and lost in something else. And I don't do that to myself anymore.
So part of your memoir touches on the fact that you were an early OG mommy blogger.
Yes, I was.
You were part of the original mommy influencers. So how did you start that?
So innocently, I hear something's new and it just, some of it was like lucky timing, but when I hear something's new, I usually go find out what it is. So today, what that looks like is learning Gen Alpha's new language, that their new words, skibbity and
skibbity. I saw a license plate with skibbity on it the other day, yesterday driving, and I texted it in the family chat. I was like, look, it's skibbity.
So I'm learning those words. I'm listening to like music. It's really easy for me to get in music ruts. I have a very diverse music interest. And so I listen to all kinds of stuff, but I had not listened to the radio in like 18 months or so. So who listens to radio anymore, right? It's streaming, and I pick my favorite music. So I realized I was not aware of how music had changed. And so I've been like binging on Brat or Charlie. It's CX.
Yep,
I don't know.
Summer influencer.
Say it right. Yeah.
Have you listened to Chapel Roan and Pink Pony Club?
Yes, I had her on this morning. I was like, I need to hear what's changing in the world. I want to know what's going on. And you don't want to become that old person that's like, kids these days. No, they're amazing. And every generation does this.
Yes.
So blogging was no different. That's basically what happened. That piece of Tia was fine. Like, I was curious, but I also had a very practical need. We had just moved out of state. I wanted to update all my family at one time. I didn't want to write an email, 10 times. I wanted to do it in one place. So I opened a blogspot.com and I started, and I had a knack for it because I'm a writer. I've always been a writer. So I was just talking about homeschooling, but this is, mommy blog, homeschooling blogs was a thing. And or was about to be a thing.
Yes.
This was 2005 or 6.
Okay.
So it was about to be a thing, and nobody really knew what the word blog meant.
Yes.
And it was like it was skibbity. That blog was skibbity back then. It was like nobody knew what that word was, why you would say it. And then some people would say weblog, and that was kind of clunky.
Yeah.
So it kept getting shortened to blog. But yeah, I was one of the first.
Yeah. So you were probably, I don't think I ever stumbled upon your blog, but like early 2006 when I was pregnant, I was definitely like already starting to consume that culture of, oh, this is what it could be like to homeschool and move around as a military family. Cause that's a big thing that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Having the visible example and the representation and the possibility, that's what the internet was doing. And it was new to us. You know, we didn't, otherwise would have had to gone to the library and look it up. We didn't know how there was different ways to be human, let alone mother, educator,
Yes.
All of that. So like just sharing your diary of your day is inspiration to somebody else. And I was sharing our homeschool field trips, because we were in this new city and we were exploring things, and just what it was like to be a homeschool mom, the books that we were reading. That's all I was sharing, which is so interesting, at the end of the day.
Right. So that's the next point is like, it's so easy, and your memoir makes it a really like stark line of like, this is what was happening on the other side of the screen,
Mm-hmm.
but this is what was being shown.
Right.
And we forget that all the time. The pressure to present is perfect or something that other people should mimic is out there all the time. Yeah.
And we are like the generation of discovery. We didn't know what an online persona was, but we were creating them. And boundaries. We were putting our kids all over the internet because we didn't know we shouldn't, it was
the digital footprints.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. We didn't know that phrase at first. So it was the wild, wild west. It really was.
If you were to tell a modern mom blogger or influencer something, looking back on it, what would your golden nugget be about that? Is a piece of wisdom.
Good question. Determine your boundaries ahead of time. That's a big one. I probably can't narrow it down just to one, but I think boundaries is a really big one. Know what you're going to post and what you're not going to post. Make sure that the truth that you're posting is true. Like it might not be everything that's happening in your life, but I call them content buckets. They're authentic. Who the Tia you meet online is a real Tia. She's not the whole fleshed out Tia because I only share pieces of myself online now.
Correct.
That's something that I'd learned, through experience. The other one is, if you're serious about it, then take yourself serious. Like that's like, it's your brand. You're building something. You're using your entrepreneurial skills. Go ahead and make it as professional looking as you want to and take yourself seriously because you don't know where that's going to lead. And everything I was using back in 2005, 6, all of that, figuring it out, I use today and helped me get on the bestsellers list. Like it's all there, the visual, the graphic, the boundaries, the content. Something interesting that will happen is I started, my Instagram account also when Instagram was brand new. And so I have a very deep account with very old photos and captions and all of that. And I always took caption writing very seriously. And, even when I had like just a handful of views on everything, like if a handful, like sometimes there's only 2, that was a time. And so, but what's interesting is what happens is people will write interviews about me that they didn't even talk to me about because of the status of the book. And they will pull old content that also like they'll embed it in their content and then it'll pull my caption. And I am so grateful that back then when no one was reading my stuff, I was still taking it seriously and doing the best I could with it and allowing a spirit of play and trying new things and all of that because it shows. Like I didn't even know that was going to hit the internet and they're bringing this old caption and I'm fine with it because I don't have any warts. I've done the background, to make sure that it's so take it seriously. Yeah.
Was there a book when you were beginning to take this writing craft seriously again, post giving birth to kids, that helped you become a writer? Because I think so many mothers have a creative force dormant in them.
Yes. I think I could probably have an entire platform just on that. Like I don't have college in my story. So when you read my book and you're reading the story of my life, I pretty much go from high school to married and a baby really quickly. And then I raise these kids and then I'm in this life and I have to heal. And then I've written a book about it. There's no go back to college and learn. I do have a paralegal certificate that I've never used a day in my life, but I did go to paralegal school when I was freshly out of my marriage and trying to put my life together. So, books are it, and this again goes back to Julie Bogart at the beginning. She was the first person to ask on a homeschooling forum. We were on Sunlight's, forum and then later a Well-Trained Mind, Susan Weiss Bowers.
Yep.
And, we had our own board called the Trapdoor Society that sprang from all of that time. And she said, what are you reading? What are you reading now? And so the idea that I didn't have to only read homeschooling books. I didn't only have to read what my kids were reading. I should be growing myself and growing my own skills was also a through line, that helped me get to where I am today. And so there are many, many books, writing books. I have whole shelves of writing. I love The Writer's Journey and On Writing by Stephen King, Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. Save the Cat, which is a really great plot structure book, especially for screenwriting. But when you read my book and it feels like a movie, that's the reflection of studying screenplay writing for so long.
That was actually my Amazon review.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I really studied that hard because I want to write movies and I wanted my book to be immersive. I wanted you to feel like you were in every scene and there with me. Which some of that was selfish. I wanted people there with me, so I'm not alone in those stories.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel that it's really remarkable how that happens. But, yeah, craft books, so many. I mean, Situation and the Story is a really good one.
Okay.
I have one that I ghost wrote called, Plotting Your Novel with the Plot Clock.
Okay.
That is the emotional development of a story. That's also selected. So, I mean, to the mom who has a creative streak, that she's busy with the children. Let me underscore how quickly the children are going to grow, and you need to be nurturing your life, especially if they're middle school and beyond. Like it's going to go in a blink. And if you wait until they're 18 and then you're going to try to find yourself, you are going to maximize the amounts of grief that you're going to have to carry. Go ahead and titrate a little bit of that, ahead of time. Start now. Give yourself an hour.
You have been my mentor with that, starting the podcast and then making sure that I do other projects. And my oldest turns 18 at the beginning of September. She's in her senior year. And blink.
I can't believe that.
Yeah, I've got a senior and a junior and then a sixth grader. I can't believe how fast they've grown.
And you have a life. So you're still going to grieve them when they go, but you're going to have something to do with your time that's developed. Doesn't have to start from the ground up. And I think that's just crucial. We don't talk enough about empty nest grief in the world, but, and sibling impact to empty nesting too.
I started therapy again this week.
Oh, good.
Or at the beginning of the school year, right? Like, I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to need it for the next 2 years to walk this journey.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cataclysmic what's about to happen. And I think it is for every woman. And we just haven't had it as part of our conversation. Just very much like menopause and perimenopause are finally getting the airtime that they deserve because these are major rites of passage for women. Empty nesting is one of them, and self-development with older children is a big piece of that.
Was there a moment of empty nesting when you stopped homeschooling?
Oh, it wasn't clean like that.
Okay.
So to back up for people who don't know, I have 4 surviving children. Yes. So I raised 4 teenagers and they're all radically different kids. There was not really a lot of commonality in their interests or their bends. And, we used every single educational model. By the time it was said and done, we used every single one there is. They've been to private school and magnet schools, art schools, homeschool. And so there were times where we'd have to homeschool for a semester and then they'd go back to their school, or they would get in the community school and test out early. So it was always different. One giant plot twist. It was really a wild ride. But what that means is that there was no clear end to homeschooling is done now until the last one left, which actually timed with when I left because my second husband asked for a divorce after I sold the book. So we moved out basically the same time, my son and I, and that's when I had to box up all the books and crayons, supplies that I had held on to. Like he hadn't used crayons for a long time. You know how
course
you
not.
do. You keep your closet.
Yes,
You keep your supplies.
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just know that as someone who walked homeschooling so long and then chose public school for my family,
Yeah.
that there was definitely a moment there that's not talked about either. But
Right.
like the doors open to homeschooling potentially again, depending on geography, mostly.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, it's not talked about. So I wanted to ask you that.
Yeah, no, there's a physicality to that because you have to really decide, are you going to hold on to all this stuff? Are you going to box it? Are you going to save it for future grandchildren? Are they going to care? It's a lot to literally pack or unpack.
Well, and I think what I want to say is that homeschooling introduced me to the idea of what you call fundamentalism. Can you tell me more about what a lot of times when we talk about fundamentalism, like the word religion is tied to it.
Right.
But in my experience, I think I found it most in the homeschool world.
So there's like
how to educate.
Exactly. Because fundamentalism attaches itself to ideologies. And so it doesn't have to be necessarily a religious ideology, although that is one of the most common ways we see it. And so there's also a fundamentalist denomination. And so people might confuse that with, oh, I'm not part of the fundamentalist faith, thinking that it's the name of that denomination. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about fundamentalism as an approach, which means that you are valuing the purity of an ideology over any other needs or components, any other aspect of life. And there's usually a formula that's going to result in a promised outcome. And if you follow this formula, you will get this happy result. And so I drill all that down to say you're either putting people first or you're putting ideas first. What's more important to you? And so it thrives in homeschooling because by itself, homeschooling is an alternative lifestyle. And it's usually attached, not always, but it's usually attached to some sort of faith system, even if that's a secular faith system. And then you have the methodology there, and we're teaching methods with the promise of outcome. So it's a perfect soup to have fundamentalist attitudes. I even encountered this is including my cult background, which was I have multiple religious cults in my story.
Yeah.
Including that. Some of the most vehement fundamentalist thinking I ever encountered was in an unschooling group.
That's so interesting.
It was bonkers, but it was also
it makes sense to me as someone that, that has tried to enter that space and was like, oh no, this is definitely
very strident. They're very strident about their ideology. And so anytime you have that, it doesn't matter if you can't be a different kind of human. You can't have a different approach because you'll break the system. And if you're breaking the system by being a human, then you're in dangerous waters. It's like the ultimate criteria. People are always asking me how do I know if I'm in fundamentalism? Yeah. Can you step a toe out of the line? Can you be different? Can you question? Can you ask why? And if the answer to that is no, then you're there.
Okay. And if you're there by accident, what do you do next?
Bless. That is a wake up. And that is, you have options. You can, if you know what you're involved in and you're trying to be very intentional with it, and you're a very strong person with excellent support system and reasoned arguments for why you are, why you think what you think. And if you think you can go into that safely, a good metaphor would be, can you go into, a room full of sick children as a healthy person and be reasonably sure you're not going to get sick too? Then go, by all means, stay in the system, use it to your benefit, get in, get out, get what you want, take what you like and leave the rest, as the saying goes. But if you are got a reduced immune system, if you're going to need to depend on them, if you're going to need to turn to them for any kind of need or community or anything like that, you're vulnerable to falling for the system and being absorbed. So, and then when we're talking about fundamentalist systems, the danger is that all the abuse and neglect that's attached to them. So because they're valuing the ideology so stridently, the human needs get neglected or abused. And so that's what you're aligning with. So then it becomes like a really sticky wicket fast. Can you do it? Can you be not complicit in the system by participating in it? Only you can know. That might not be the same answer every day either. That might be a process. I
think that's important to remember, that there's a process when you discover that you're here.
There's a lot of people that have to rely on a flawed homeschooling support system because it's the only thing they have. And they know that by participating in that system, they are around abuse and neglect that's happening.
Yep.
Weird homeschoolers that they know something's up, but they don't have the language for it is more often how it presents. But they need it. So
right.
now you're in an uncomfortable place.
As someone that has moved with the Navy, right? Like finding that who's the homeschooler here? What's the vibe of the homeschooler? Yeah. Will we have to be alone or can I be here kind of with this group?
Right. Exactly. And I really think that's where information is so powerful, because if you know what to look for, then maybe perhaps you can participate and keep an eye out for abuse. Maybe you can participate and see their humanity and help them on their way out. You know, there's people there who are looking for other ways to be human and they just don't know anybody. And so homeschooling can be the gateway. It just takes, I think, a lot of awareness of what's going on and your own vulnerabilities and the subtle way minds are changed. It's a difficult environment. I really feel for anybody that's their only community, for example, and their kids are really lonely unless they go play with the weird homeschoolers who might also be, you know, steeped in abuse.
So when you realize that abuse is happening now, are you in circles where you're nervous about abuse?
Not so much personally anymore. Online, I recognize it all the time. So I lived the trad wife lifestyle. This is what we're talking about, you know, before it was called the trad wife lifestyle. And the signs are there. It was
what was in my Brio magazine that I got every month.
Exactly. Brio, but also like gentle mothering and above
when
Ruby.
I was a new wife, the other people at Adam's Command gave me a Debbie Pearl book. I've got How to Train Up a Child as a baby shower gift, which I promptly burned. Which is the only, if you ever tell me that there's never a book that should be burned, it should be that one.
It should be that one, and it should not be in print anymore, and he should not be allowed to continue doing this, and somehow he is, because enough survivors, I think, have not made enough stake. And I'm hoping that's one of the things I went for broke on with my book. I'm like, I'm just going to tell the whole truth and put it out there, and I'm going to do it as big as I can, and I hope that it takes it down. I hope that's
the Baby Wise Ezo books where you don't trust yourself anymore. That's how I ended up with a child that was failure to thrive initially.
Yes. So many babies. Babies have even died from that. And it gets swept under the rug. And it's time for we just get really loud about it. Enough people come by and say, no, actually, this was harmful. And that's how movements happen. So I'm encouraged for that. But abuse, like when the trad wife content comes out now, I'm like, I just see flag. And I don't personally know them to report them or anything like that. Right. All I can do is educate the base so that the people who are close to them and can call it out, you know, recognize it and call it out. And we can tell exposure stories. There's so much power in that.
So that's what I've done when I found it adjacent to me in like this Navy life. When I get the red flags and I'm like, ooh, okay, let me share this TED Talk about someone that escaped the crazy love story, or let me share this other thing. And then eventually it turns into like sharing gift cards randomly. Or when I feel really unsure, then I purchase burner cell phones.
Yo, I love that. People are always asking me for tips, and the gift card one's very popular because it's untraceable money. If you're listening and you're wondering why would a gift card be so powerful, it's because no one knows you have it. You can use it without a record. And burner cell phones, that's a great one. I'm going to borrow it.
Well, because the number of domestic violence talks that I've had to go to be trained for the lookouts for it because of Adam's spot in the Navy, like the number of apps that get put on phones that you don't know about nowadays. It's terrifying. An iPhone is like the perfect tracking device.
Right. It really is. Yeah. Yeah. I love that burner idea.
It's just so hard to think that there are so many people that need help.
Yeah, it's true. And especially when it's part of the mainstream culture and it's guised in this, it's good for you, idealism, magic outcome, simple times, quaint nostalgia, getting ready to do a reel. I do these, if you don't know my work, I do social media reels that tie all to this together. And I'm getting ready to do one that ties Little House on the Prairie with the Duggar Show and Tradwife content, because it's all the same thing.
Yep.
It's just that same idealism that this simpler time is the solution we need. There are so many good reasons why we're not Puritans anymore. And we need to remember that. Like, I don't want to go back to 1500s. There's a reason why 1600s and 1700s didn't live like.
Yeah. 15. One of my favorite TED Talks is like the life-changing moment of when someone's mom got a washing machine, right? Because then she suddenly had free time to read.
Right.
Like, I want my free time.
Yes. And I love a good clothesline, but when you are doing a clothesline as part of a simple lifestyle, there's a lot of you that is not happening, which is why the system likes it.
Yeah. If you could tell a new mom one thing, what would you tell her?
Trust yourself. I believe in women's instinct. And the throwback I always get on this is, but what about the complicit women? What about the bad women? I don't think there's bad women. I think there's victims. And the first thing that patriarchy does, high control patriarchy does, is tie you in and make you complicit in the system so that you become the perpetuator that keeps it going. The patriarchy cannot continue without women. So those new moms are flooded with instinct. They're flooded with survival for their baby, attachment, bonding, and attachment theory. We know so much about it, how it carries you through life. And that initial bond with your baby is
those
so
first
vital.
3 years for both of your brains. Your brain changes. It rewires.
Yeah. Trust the science. Trust your instinct. Listen to survivors. If you are tempted to try an ideology out because someone hands you a book and says this will help you, even as simple as getting your baby to sleep through the night, listen to people who didn't like it. Find out why they didn't like it. You listen to those survivor accounts, not the people who endlessly promise the good outcome. Find out, well, how did that really work for people? And you usually get that through the negative reviews. That's where you go find what it's really about. And listen to survivors is never let me down.
And that's such a good reminder. I guess I hadn't thought of looking for the negative reviews.
Yeah, because the people selling it and like praising it aren't going to tell you what it's really like to experience it, so like kids who came out of that system, that's good. That's a good one to listen to. What does the Academy of Pediatrics say about it? Like, have children been harmed through this? What's the impact to the relationships? Or how does it go with what we know of child development science? Like, we live right now in the most technologically advanced, internet connected, and psychologically aware generation of all humanity, the entire humanity. We have so much evidence-based content to put against these promises of how they actually work. We don't have to repeat the same mistakes that someone else did.
Yeah, that's magical. And I think it's as simple as like taking whatever if someone gives you a book about childhood and parenting, Google that then. Look for the negative reviews, no matter if it's a mainstream book.
Right.
Like, I know that like there's lots of big books out there that have little tentacles into this power structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things I really emphasize in my book is how each book led to another. And when you are a readerly person and you are used to doing your own homework and you want books, it's very easy to get on that chain of one book will lead you to another book and they will build upon each other and you will trust them because they're connected. And that is all overriding your own voice, and that is all overriding the outcomes. You get caught in the promise cycle really easily. So being able to pause, hold your hand on your chest, feel what you're really feeling, and ask, okay, how did this turn out? And is this the right thing for my family? Because you're not responsible for everyone else's family. You're responsible for your legacy, your child, your descendant. And you want to not repeat what your parents did, well-meaning though they may be.
Yep.
This is not a condemnation on the previous generation at all. This is the human evolution wants to continue improving. So if you don't want your kids to end up in the same kind of therapy that you're in, what can you do differently? Well, it's not going to be falling into another system that overrides what you've already known. You've already learned this. Like this trust language, I think has been so missing.
Yes.
You can trust yourself.
That's my catchphrase, that you're already exactly the right mom for your kids.
I love it. Every time you say it, I'm like, oh, that's such a good line. That's the thing. I want to tell you a story about that line, because
Okay.
I used it in a powerful way. So on the morning that I turned 50, I had my mom on my mind first thing. And I have kind of a tense relationship with my mom. We're not like an easy bond
Hmm.
together. We've had to work at it a lot through most of my life, but we love each other, and we're good family members, but we're not, there's not a super intimate closeness there.
Yeah.
And so I woke up, with her on my mind, and I realized, like this is kind of her 50th birthday too. Like her
Yeah.
firstborn is 50. And my heart kind of broke for that. I was like, oh, I know what that feels like. Cause when my oldest turns 28 and 27, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been a mother for 28 years. So I called my mom and I told her, you were exactly the right mom for me. And thank you. And I took it
Oh,
directly from you, Christy. And it has healed something between my mom and I. Like she needed to hear that even for all of our imperfection and
yeah.
strain and all of that, that I'm not holding anything against her. That this she was who I needed, who I am today is because of my mom, for better or for worse, all the
Hmm.
things, the
Yeah.
things I've had to work through, they're a result of that. So she's exactly who I needed. And I wouldn't have wanted a different mom.
Oh.
So thank you for that. Thank you. You gave me powerful language.
Oh, that's magical. I'm so
Mhm.
glad that we get to connect. So I have
Yes.
two questions that I always wrap up with. The first is, what's a simple act of self-care that someone could use right away?
Sit down on the floor. It's my go-to every single time. And you'll feel silly for a minute, but just do it. The ground is the best. Sit on the ground. And there's science for this because it has to do with our electric circuitry and how the actual planet grounds us and completes the circuit. There's yoga moves that emphasize it, but the most dramatic, and think of yourself as a little 2-year-old that doesn't want to go somewhere right now. What do? They go dead weight and they sit down.
Hmm.
And that's wise. Give your nervous system a chance to feel itself, complete the electrical anxiety circuit, and let everything calm down before you do the next thing. It will not fail you. It
That's
will it
fantastic.
won't solve the big life problems, but it will
Yeah.
give you a moment of bandwidth.
That's, I call it kind of doing the opposite. Like when I want to get angry and like start stomping around, especially
Yeah.
with my teenagers, doing the opposite, just sitting down all the way to the ground. Yeah.
It's powerful. And it like drops the tug of war rope. It means you're not going to oppose. You're not going to get in conflict. You're going to just go
Yep.
inert.
And then my next question always is, and your kids are big, but I'm sure you have some ideas. What is an act of family fun? And it could be right now. Like what's fun as a family or fun from a long time ago?
Yes, our fun right now is the WhatsApp group chat because WhatsApp is
Yes.
international and I have international kids and grandkids, and like it allows us to stay in each other's lives. We have a couple rules about what we talk about and don't in the family chat, but we have a lot of generations involved. My parents are on it and my sister and her family are on it. And so the cousins get to stay in touch,
Oh,
and it's like we're in one room together, and it has been so powerful. And it's a little thing, a lot of people have group chats, but it creates a record. You have the docs and
mm-hmm.
links and all that stuff, and we're able to have the inside jokes. And in our family, we could get kind of competitive with the home improvement type projects or the crafts with big things. And so if you're an underachiever, I feel for you because we've got some big stuff happening in there. I was like, we need to even it out a little bit, but it's been a lot of fun. It's been a good thing.
That's awesome. And one last surprise question. What was the last pie that you baked?
Christy, I don't bake pies anymore.
Oh,
I miss it
no.
so much. I miss it so much. I was just today looking at my pictures of pies.
Okay, when you come to the Washington, D.C. area, we will bake a pie in
We
my
will bake a
kitchen because
pie.
no one's baked a pie in my new kitchen yet.
That has to be me. Yeah. So my partner has diabetes and I don't really eat sugar. And so I have been like
Oh,
not,
we're going to rock a
but I'm
gluten-free
like,
crust for me and we'll do
yeah,
whatever pie
exactly.
you
I
want.
make a really good gluten-free pie.
Awesome.
I used to. I don't know if I still like pie baking is the kind of thing where you have to do it or you lose it. And
Uh-huh.
I hope I still have it. I hope I do. But
I
yeah,
think it's
no,
in your
cherry
bones.
pie. I want a cherry pie. I want a blueberry pie. I love making peach pies at this point in the summer. But I don't want to eat a whole pie anymore. Like when I
Yeah.
had the kids home, I could make a pie and it would be gone that afternoon.
Yeah.
You know?
It's
Maybe
like my
a
batches
slice
of
breakfast.
cookies that disappear right now.
Yeah. Right. Oh, enjoy it. That's why women stop baking. There's nobody to eat it. So.
Aw.
Yeah. I know.
We need to feed each other.
We do.
We need a pie gathering. So where should everyone go besides picking up your New York Times bestseller book, A Well-Trained Wife? Your social media handle is what, Tia?
Tia Levings writer on everything. And my Substack is tialevings.substack.com. That's where I actively deconstruct fundamentalism in our culture, headlines, families, and my own recovery. But books available anywhere books are sold.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Congratulations. I am so glad that you are here on earth, and I'm so glad that I'm in this moment with you.
Thank you so much. This was such a sweet treat.